For just a moment this holiday season, I'd like to ask you to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Imagine that you're homeless, but you still have one good thing in your life, your partner. But you're in a city, and as it grows darker, it grows colder too, and you're in desperate need of shelter. But thankfully, there's a homeless shelter nearby, run by the Salvation Army. And you're taken in, you're given a hot meal, but before you can sit down, it's clear that the people who took you in have something to ask of you. For you to receive their help, they only ask you one small price: to give up the one good thing in your life, your partner. You refuse, and you're put back out on the streets, all because you dared to love someone of the same gender. Unfortunately, this is not some random sob story I made up, but rather the very real story, and one of many, by renowned journalist Bill Browning, who was left homeless because he refused to break up with his boyfriend in New York in 1995. But what is the Salvation Army? The Salvation Army is a conservative Christian charity, and it's its own church too. It was founded in 1878 according to the Michigan Sociological Review, and according to Forbes, is the fourth largest charity in the US, making $3 billion a year. It's best known for their bell ringers and red kettles, and their motto, to do the most good. However, how can you do the most good when you ignore 1/4 of the world's population? The Salvation Army has a long homophobic history which they need to make up for, and they do not deserve your donations this holiday season. In my speech, I'll be going over the specifics of what the Salvation Army has done in the past in the US, and why you shouldn't donate to them, how they can make up for this, and how they can redeem themselves. Let's start with what they've done. The Salvation Army has a long history of being homophobic, as close to home as San Francisco and as far up the political chain as the White House. In 1998, the Salvation Army pulled $3 million from San Francisco because of a law providing equal benefits to LGBT employees. This decision came after 11 months of negotiating with the city planners, but on the grounds that the ordinance greatly conflicts with their organization's Christian beliefs in recognizing the importance of family. These $3 million could have went to helping senior citizens and the homeless, but they'd rather use that money as a political bargaining chip to deprive others of equal rights. And this story came from the SF Gate. And according to Chicago Pride, another newspaper for New York, in 2004, the Salvation Army tried to shut down all of its services in New York City due to a similar law. Just another case where they'd rather deprive others in need and not do the most good than help others who actually need it. In a scarier mission, in 2001, during the Bush administration, behind closed doors, the Salvation Army tried to pass a law allowing religious federally funded charities such as themselves to forego LGBTQ equal rights ordinances. And they tried to keep this a secret, but when it came out that they had officials in the White House trying to push this law, they tried to cover it up. But many newspapers, such as The Advocate, actually covered this story. And it's crazy that they tried to do that, at least be open with the bigotry. And unfortunately, this isn't something of just the past. In 2012, to make their position very clear on how they felt, Major George Hood, a representative of the Salvation Army, stated, "A relationship between same-sex couples is a personal choice that people have the right to make. But from a church point of view, we see it as going against the will of God." And this shows that they are not remorseful for their actions and is not anywhere near the apology that the community deserves. And in 2013, after a site reboot, they had to remove 2 links from their sexual addictions page that led to gay conversion therapy sites. And that's just too big of a mistake to make. However, it's still a charity, and they still try to help people, and they still want to do the most good. But how can people willingly donate to them when so much has been done? Well, first of all, to be redeemed, they must at least release a detailed public apology. On their website now, they do say that they accept LGBT community, but they've never done anything to show that directly. They've apologized before, so it's not unreasonable to ask. Back in the late 1980s in New Zealand, they tried to gather signatures to overturn a law that decriminalized being gay. And they later apologized for that, as they should have, but they still haven't apologized for what they've done in the US. We can't just be some backdoor friend, like Bill Browning said, the renowned journalist who was kicked out in the streets earlier. But just imagine if they did this. Finally, if they apologize and they redeem themselves in the eyes of the LGBT community. People would be able to donate again without contributing to unrepentant homophobia, they would be able to better fulfill the mission statement of doing the most good, and they'd be able to help more people. Donors would no longer have to feel guilty when trying to be charitable and to be a good person. And the LGBTQ youth who are so often homeless would no longer have to hide who they are in order to receive help. And lastly, the Salvation Army is such a large charity, and because of their stance as a conservative Christian charity, if they came out in support of LGBTQ community, they could lead the way to major change in more conservative areas. But yet they have yet to do this. So this holiday season, I ask that you don't donate to them and that you spread the word on what I've just told you. Because the Salvation Army has taken away support of others who desperately needed it to protest equal rights, they've openly stated their distaste for the community, and they've tried to pass a law that would allow them to openly discriminate without being held accountable. And although it may be in the holiday spirit, I do believe the Salvation Army can be redeemed. They're still a charity, and people still want to do the most good. And I ask you that to spread the word, to not directly harass the bell ringers, because most people who live in the Salvation Army, who work for the Salvation Army, don't know this past, and they're just trying to be good people. But until then, please don't donate, and tell others about what I have told you. And together, hopefully, we can create a more equal future. Thank you.